Enable, Pacman, it is time for our reverse sweep power rankings, and I know you guys made some fairly significant shifts for today, but before we get into that, let's quickly run through everything that's happened in the first week of Stage 3. Teams like Dallas winning their first series with Hook, but ending up losing when they brought Fellow into the roster in kind of the shocking decision maybe of the season. Toronto has continued to look hot, as does OpTic. Thieves looking strong as well, and well, FaZe, in the only series that they played this week, they fell to Subliners, going all the way to a Game 5, Round 11. And what does that mean for the standings of these teams so far after Week 1? Granted, take these with a grain of salt, because some teams did play 2 series and some teams only played 1. But OpTic at the top of Group B in Toronto with a perfect 6-0 map record at the top of Group A, continuing to look very, very, very strong. So Pacman, Ian, it's time. Let's take a look at your power rankings. And I know there's one spot on this list that's going to be kind of glaring because, well, number 1 is no longer FaZe. But before we get into that, you know, we always like to start at the bottom and work our way up. So, London Royal Ravens, they've had a couple shifts. They've been struggling. They've only won 2 series in the year. Pacman and y'all got them at 12th.
I mean, you just said it. They've only won 2 series, and we had a little hope for them. They were moving in the right direction because they started out with 0, and then they made a team change, and it looked to be all right. It looked like they could do something. They had some potential, and then they cut Dylan, and it's just not looking good. It's just not looking good. It doesn't bode well for their future. I know they've had a tough go of it. I know it with Alex and Trey, and they started with Parasite. It's been rough. But I mean, this is competition. It is what it is. And right now they're sitting in the bottom spot.
Yeah. I mean, they have to be 12th. Like you said, I thought when they added Paul X, maybe they were starting to turn it around. They did get some wins under their belt, but they have 2 total wins throughout the entire year. And, you know, I think Dylan being benched was the right move. I just don't think Zap was the right player to really help improve them. I know it's still very new. Even though it's a 1-player swap, it's a very new team still. But yeah, they haven't been doing anything. They haven't been showing any signs of improvement since they originally signed Paul X. And you know, this is probably the most competitive league we've had ever right now. And I just think when you look at their team on paper, when you watch them play their games, they're not up to par compared to some of these other teams, compared to majority of the other teams in the league. So they're the worst team. It sucks. But London, if you want to roast somebody, just roast Pac.
Oh, here. Sorry, Pacman. You're going to be the easy target on this one. And Paris also not finding any easy targets in the league. They had a rough start to their Stage 3 as well, but you guys kept them. Ian, y'all kept them at 11th.
Yeah, I mean, and this is just a case of you can't really put, I mean, I guess you could put them 12th. I do think that if you were to match Paris and London up head-to-head, Paris would win. But yeah, they haven't looked well either with Temp. I was really hoping that Donnie would just kind of be this breath of fresh air for them because it was obvious that Fire was a weak link. Yeah. But maybe there's more issues to the team. You know, they had close series with Fire not performing that hot. And so far in Stage 3, they look the same. It looks like it's almost a lateral move. Maybe we just need to give them a little bit more time with Temp, but they don't have time. You know, every team here, if you're not fighting to be in champs to get that top 8 spot, then what are you doing? You're literally throwing for a higher draft pick like they do in sports all the time. So can't really move them any further. Believe me, if we could, I think we would have. But they're just the bottom of the barrel.
It's tough because I feel like this is the team that Ian believed in the most of all like the bottom teams.
I did.
This is the team.
Well, we all had a lot of hope for them.
Yeah, and it's just I haven't given up on them yet. But
I did. That shit's out the window.
But I feel like that showing this weekend was actually horrendous. LAG beat them down, right? And that's not like they didn't play a top team. They need to. This is honeymoon stuff. They played another honeymoon team, but their honeymoon was way nicer. They were in Cancun. These dudes were
got divorced.
Detroit.
Quick.
They got beat down. I mean, I don't understand why it's like this because I feel like Yuli has been playing really well this year. Nick's had those times, those flashes of brilliance. Scraps has been solid, but as a whole, it doesn't work, or it hasn't worked. They've shown that it can from time to time, but there's no consistency here whatsoever. This is the least consistent team in the league, and it's tough. We can't really move them any higher than 11th.
Well, Gorillas did manage to crawl their way out of that 12th place spot, moving up 2, but still in the double digits, still at 10th. Pacman, Gorillas, you bring in Chino, and he has a great debut for them. I think Vivid was kind of a controversial benching, but do you think Honeymoon? Do you think maybe they might move up? But why do you got them at 10?
Well, I mean, they did what they had to do. They came out. They just that they beat a weak opponent, but they did beat them, right? So we give them their props and bump them up. They can keep going up. I don't really feel like it's Honeymoon. I do feel like there's still a level that they won't be able to reach higher than, but at least they're in a spot where they can actually, they're in 8th, I believe, overall. They're in a spot where they can compete and still make that final or whatever it is. And I believe that LAG made a move that they thought was going to work. It might have been controversial, but it showed that it could have fixed up their issues. I really do believe, at least over there, that they believe in their team, and that's all that really matters. Who cares what we all think? So we'll see.
Exactly. I mean, the Vivid move, still have questions about it. Obviously, bringing in Sheen and having Silly move to that sub role, it definitely slows them down. But hey, maybe if that gets them all on the same page and they're on the same pace, they're going to be able to see more success. Now, I do think their low ceiling is lower with Sheen, and it's nothing against Sheen at all, because he played phenomenal, and I think I want him to continue to play very well. But it's just at the end of the day, when you play these top teams that are very aggressive, very decisive, they're gonna have laps being ran around them. That's what it comes down to. But like John said, they're 8th currently in the points, so like they're in the hunt still. And I think honestly, they could probably hold that spot up until champs, but I got to see how they do, Katie, against an actual threat. It's too early to tell with Sheen, even though he did look fantastic.
No, I mean, that's definitely a good point. And unfortunately, a team that was not able to maintain their positioning, Seattle moved down to 9th place. So Pacman, Seattle, I know that in prior shows, we've also discussed kind of their issues with closing things out, their issues with control, but why did you guys bump them down to 9th?
I mean, they can't close. So no matter how strong we think that they could be,
that's what she said.
No matter how strong we think they could be, they're not hitting it. They're not reaching their potential. And these other teams above them are making strides. They're making strides to improve. They're at least winning some games. Seattle's battling. I mean, I still believe you throw them up against any team, and it could be a really good match. But do I believe that they'll win? No, I don't. Not anymore. That's also gone out the window for me. Like I said, they were gonna make it to the winners finals.
Boy was strong.
I was clearly tripping. They would have to win a damn control for that to happen. They can't do that. They can't close.
They're the worst. They're the worst good team I've ever they are the biggest choke artists in the league right now.
It feels like they constantly trip over their own feet.
Yeah. Like, I'm not saying that they deserve to, be top 3 in the power rankings or anything, Katie, right? But like, it's not like when they lose these series, especially as of late, when you look at other teams, you're like, wow, they're just getting bodied. Like, they don't even have a chance. It's like Seattle literally has the game in their grasp, and then they just trip at the finish line. And it's happened so often. There's not a reason for it. And it's like John said, Looney's getting a lot of flack lately. And he knows, he's been around. He knows that he maybe isn't performing too hot. But it's not like they're not losing because Danny's not getting, or Looney, sorry, isn't getting 4 more kills in the map, to bump his KD up a little bit. Like, these are fundamental issues that they're having. And at this point, I think they're all in their own heads, because they know, like, damn, we were up 2-0. Guess what? We got reverse swept. Damn, we were up, by 50 points in this hard point. We choked at the end. It's like, at the end of the day, you just got to be able to close out, really clutch up, because when you're playing top comp, you gotta, it's gonna come down to the wire. Sometimes you got to get a little lucky and to build your confidence, and it just seems like Seattle just continues to choke every single series.
So then what about Florida? Because you have Florida right above Seattle. And it is tough, right? Because it can be, at least in terms of just closing out Seattle, it can be very frustrating to just continually watch a team.
The worst way to lose, Katie.
It's so frustrating to watch. I can't even imagine how it feels to be them when you know that it's kind of just you not being able to close on things. But to not get into the deep weeds of maybe how their emotional states are, let's talk about Florida. They moved up to 8th place. They went 1-1 on the week. They did lose 3-0 to the team that you guys have as the best team in the game, but they also did have a nice win over Minnesota Rocket. They got 4th at the major. So you guys bumped them up, but you have them at 8th place. Why is that, Ian?
I mean, I like this move with Havoc, bringing him back in. I think he adds a lot of pace to the team. He obviously hasn't got the CDL reps. So going into that first series versus Toronto, it's going to be tough. Yeah, you would have liked for him to play a little bit better, maybe Florida to play a little better, but Toronto, they are the reigning champs. So I wasn't expecting them to win, but they looked very good versus Minnesota, a team that I think everyone has in their top 4 currently. Havoc looked more comfortable around the map. Their pacing was really good. Their teamwork looked like it was on point. And you saw Big Wake do his thing. Skies was doing his thing. So I think they have a lot of potential. I think as we get deeper into this stage and Havoc gets more comfortable with the team and also playing at that CDL level, they're only going to keep improving. And one thing I want to touch on though is when they did the listening, when I was watching, Havoc was a huge part of their communication, which is surprising. I think he maybe has grown a lot as a player, especially since the beginning of this year, where maybe he is their IGL or he's their hype man. He's keeping the energy levels high, which you love to see. You love to see the intangibles and just other ways you can influence your team's success, especially if you're not performing as well as you would like to have. But Florida finally has the potential, I feel like, to really improve. And, they have the talent. They have the talent, Katie, to really compete in these matches and these majors. So I'm excited to see where they go.
I got to say, it's probably really great for Florida to be able to go to their bench and pick up someone that they actually believe in that they can go forward and win because they did it already with them twice last season. It's not like other teams where they just pick up someone off their bench because for the time being they need a slot filled. This could be Florida's real team going forward. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. I just feel like of all the teams that we've consistently had towards the bottom half, this is the team that could just win a tournament. This is the team that could just catch fire, and they just have the scary players. Skies, Large Wake, like this guy's going crazy.
Large Wake
was going nuts.
Wake.
Yeah, like they have the potential to be a championship team, and they showed it again. Even though they lost to Toronto, that's the number 1 team in the game right now. They showed that they can beat top talent, and we already knew that. And hopefully, they find that consistency that they had last season with Havoc, and they get back to that point.
So what about Thieves then? The best of the worst. You guys moved them down to 7th, even though they started out with 2 wins on this stage. Ian, why'd y'all bump Thieves down despite starting out 2-0?
I think, Katie, this is a case where it's just like they looked good. They reverse swept London, right? That was their
Seattle.
first match. For Seattle, yeah, reverse swept Seattle, sorry. And obviously they won 3-1 versus London, but there's just other teams that looked a lot better. I'm not fully convinced that LAT is like in that upper echelon of teams. They looked good. Kenny looked great. I personally want to bump them up into that top 6, but that's just me being a LA Thieves stan. Like it's hard to really put them up there. Yeah, we need to see more of a sample size. That's the thing. They only had 2 days of practice going into the major, and now we're 2 series into stage 3. So I think they're right there though if they continue, because they had their 2 easiest matches in their group so far. So I think when we see them next week go up against the better teams in their group, we'll get a really good understanding of where they're at.
Yeah, this is the team that has the most potential to move to skyrocket up the power rankings. Only have them here due to, I mean, lack of competition power that they've played so far. They've only lost one series, I believe, with this team. So you could already make an argument that they could be higher. It's just we need to see them prove it over a more consistent period of time. And I feel like right now at this stage they have that potential. They look really good. I don't think we've seen them get the real quality win yet. I think the only one they really have is over NYSL in the stage, but NYSL was also playing horrible at the time. So that's no fault to LAT, but it just is what it is. We see them play these teams playing at their full potential, and then we bump them up. LA Thieves is definitely, even though they moved down in the power rankings, they're still going in the right direction, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction to make. Unfortunately, the team above them not going in the right direction. Dallas, well, you moved them down before, and they're the biggest mover this week for the power rankings, dropping by 3. Dallas in 6th, and well, Ian, explain the reasoning.
I don't want to say they got bodied. It was a fairly close series, versus Toronto. But when you package that with the fact that you benched your most talented player in Cold War so far. Yeah, he hasn't been playing up to expectations recently, and we don't know the reasons, if there's personal reasons involved or he's just kind of in a slump. But it's like Kyler is a franchise player. You're essentially benching a franchise player on your team for Fellow, who, no disrespect to Fellow, he's a very good player in his own right. He's not Hugh. He ain't never going to be Hugh, period. There's only a handful of people that are as talented as him. And they did it after they had won their first series of the stage, which is, weird. I don't know. And they did it at like you said, midnight, so I just think maybe there's more issues that we don't know. And I don't see Fellow being the help that they think they're going to get. I don't know if they're trying to make a move for Hook, or it's going to be this weird dynamic where they go into next week's matches, they don't play too hot, they bring Kyler back, and then it's like, well, what was your whole thought process? Why did you do it? So they didn't look bad. And I know moving them 3 spots down seems like a lot, but I think that's more just the other teams are improving. They have convincing wins, and Empire they're stuck in this weird situation right now from my point of view. And they don't look like they're that dominant team like we thought they were going to be in the beginning of the year.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't dominant with Kyler. They're going to be less dominant without Kyler. It's just, if you look there, this version of the team hasn't won a map. Let's put it that way. But we know that they still have the potential. They could still win. I feel like 6 is a solid spot for a team. If you look at the teams that we're going to have above them, they're all championship ready. They're all trying to win. They're in the form they need to be to compete for that championship, and it's only fair to those teams that we bump Dallas down in their current state. Do I feel like they'll stay in this position? No. They have too much talent, and whatever potential moves they make, they're going to move back up. But for now, this is where they belong.
And for now, you also have Subliners above them, sitting in 5th, moved up 2 places from 7th. They did have 1 series this week, and they came out on top over FaZe. You can say what you want about how that kind of ended up, Ian, but Subliners, you have them at 5th.
Hell, HyDra. Boy's a beast. Paco, I think that's his name. But yeah, we gotta show love to him. They finally made the move that we've been talking about. And it sucks for Diamond Con, but if HyDra is this generational talent, you got to give him his shot. And I think he showed up. He was playing FaZe. When you look at FaZe's roster, okay, and this is your first CDL match, that is the worst possible situation to be put in. Like the amount of pressure that you have on you, and he played great. Even if they would have lost that round 11, Katie, I still think that I would have them.
Oh, it's a positive for them. It's a positive for them regardless, even if it was close.
I mean, they took FaZe to that map 5. I mean, they beat them in both hard points. And the more important thing is they were down in that map 5. They were getting completely outplayed in that
raid. They were down 5-3.
And they switched their game. They were able to, basically steal a win away from FaZe. But just to see that with a new team, because HyDra joining them changes their whole dynamic. It was big, and HyDra's talent is, you don't need to put that in question. I think he could quickly rise as to one of the most talented players in the CDL. So I think their ceiling's just a lot higher. And, you know, they got a big win, even though it's even though it's one series. That series was against FaZe, who's only lost 3 series total so far this whole year. So you got to show them love.
Yeah, that's the toughest match you could have going forward. You could say Toronto, but I mean, either way, on paper, this is the toughest match for a new player to come into, like you said, no question. And he came out in the first hardpoint and was smoking them. Like,
went off.
Yeah, he was going off. He was putting the Atlanta FaZe ARs on swords, right? He was actually keeping them clamped down, putting the pressure in their face, and that's what you need to open up the map. So Clayster can go back to the form that he showed earlier on in the season, where he was playing a dominant AR role, and I think that's what he did. I'm really impressed by HyDra's individual talent and is just in general his positioning. He was playing really smart, and it wasn't just all individual gun skill and flashiness like we're used to. So props to them.
Yep, well, Subliners, we'll see if they can keep moving up, but OpTic not quite cracking back into the top 3 yet, but you did move them up to number 4, Pacman. Why is that?
I mean, they were solid. They're the OpTic. This is the OpTic team that we expect, right? It's getting those easy wins, and I believe they stopped streaming scrims, which I know that doesn't sound like it's no other team streams scrims, but for them, that means they're taking it just another level of serious. No more jokes. Right. No more little banter with the stream in between. Like, let's crack down and figure out our mistakes and talk about it and actually get to the nitty gritty and get back to being where we need to be. And I think that now we're just seeing them be consistent. They're back to being a really consistent, strong respawn team. Envoy looks fantastic again, and OpTic's really scary. No one in the league no one of the other teams want this OpTic team to start rolling, because once they do, they have ridiculous individual talent, and it could just be scary for the rest of the league, and they're looking really good.
They're championship ready. You know, they're there. They had some heartbreaking losses, but I think, like John said, now is the point where they're just really locked in. They're not streaming their scrims. I mean, shit, Scump hasn't uploaded to YouTube in like 3 weeks to a month, so you know he's locked in. If he's not doing that, he's locked in. So I think they're all really just focused, and you know, they've been playing well. I've heard they've been playing very well, especially in scrims lately. So, you know, it's the top 4 is the top 4. You're amongst the best.
Well, one above them in the best, Rocker, you guys bumped them up to 3rd, Ian, and I'm curious on that because they did start out their stage by losing 3-1 to Florida. Yeah,
I mean, this is just because of Dallas being bumped down 3 spots. You know, Dallas was previously 3rd and Rocker was 4th. And it was a tough series, a series that I thought Minnesota should have won. They didn't look too hot, but it's only one series at the end of the day. And you could call that the honeymoon period with Florida. But this isn't like oh my God, they played great, let's move them up. It was because Empire, just with everything going on in their camp, you kind of have to. And I don't think we can write off Minnesota just yet, just because of one series.
Yeah, I mean, all these teams are talented. They can lose. You start flipping off one series for everyone, this thing would go crazy, right? So, I mean, top teams have that privilege, you know what I mean, where they can lose a series and not panic as long as they just bounce back. They bounce back in their next week's matches, and it is what it is. All these teams are going to lose if it's not proven by FaZe at this point. FaZe was the most dominant team we've seen in this game, and now they're losing too. So let's not panic over one loss. And like Ian said, this is more Dallas moving down and Rocker just being in that spot.
Well, you say let's not panic over one loss. FaZe also started the stage with that loss, 3-2 to Subliners. And let's just talk about Toronto and FaZe together, because this is the first time we've seen FaZe knocked out of that first place spot. You guys have Toronto up 1, FaZe down 1. What made you guys, Pacman, come to the decision to finally bump FaZe down?
Well, FaZe has just lost back-to-back matches, and that, I mean, it is what it is. We're talking about the top 2 teams in the game, and Toronto just came off a championship and then entered the stage and went 6-0 in maps. We got to give them their props, their love. Right now, they're the best team in the game. They have the best chemistry and the best teamwork. They were down bad in that hard point to Dallas, and they came right back and won it. Like, that's a championship team. That's what the best team in the game does. And say what you want about how FaZe lost, gave it away, whatever, but winning is winning, you know what I mean? And they lost, so we had to bump them down. FaZe still is scary. You put FaZe up against anyone, I'm still picking FaZe, most likely, but Toronto is in the best form right now. Toronto has the best teamwork. Toronto seems to have the most confidence. Toronto's the best team, and I think they earned that.
Yeah. This just more so Toronto proving, in my opinion, that the major wasn't a one-off. They came into the stage, like John said, 6-0 map count. And they're showing their consistency, so you got to show them love. You know, they're the reigning champs, and it's not like it was a fluke win. They look like they are the best team. They have the best teamwork. I think the most underrated thing about them, though, Katie, is their understanding for the game. It seems like right now they've switched, because in the beginning it was FaZe, and now I feel like FaZe is kind of relying too much on talent, where Toronto is just, they're like a well-oiled machine from top to bottom. So I'm excited to see how good they can keep getting, because they look dominant right now, and it's definitely not a team I would have had in the #1 spot, I think, ever for this season.
No, I think we can all agree on the surprise of that. But Toronto, they continue to impress. They start off the stage 6-0. And that is why, coming off of being the reigning champions for the second major, they will take the first place in our standings over FaZe. And that'll be it for the reverse sweep power rankings. Please do let us know what you think of them in the comments. But FaZe, maybe they can work their way back. And Dallas, who knows, finally down into that 6th place position. Who knows what happens from here, but we'll see how everything gets changed once week 2 wraps up.